I can't go with you. What do you mean you can't? Basin asked, trying hard not to let his face fall. He had been well aware that she might turn him down. He had practically been begging for it, springing that question on her like he had. Lishu was trying as hard as he was to hide her emotions, and meeting with the same mixed success. Tears gathered in her eyes and her mouth was tight. She was clenching her fists so hard her nails bit into her palms. Maomao had told him to tell her, to make clear how he felt, maybe that had been a mistake. Basin's actions had only brought Lishu more pain. Lady Lishu, please just, he was about to say forget what I said, but she burst out, I wish I could go with you. She looked him square in the face, just managing to hold back her tears. But now I know all too well. I'm a foolish girl who knows nothing of the world, and someone will try to use me no matter where I go. I know they were trying to keep me safe by sending me here to Red Plum Village. Basin knew it was true. All the inhabitants of Red Plum Village were eccentrics, loosed from the fetters of the secular world. Many of them weren't even that interested in other people, so they wouldn't torment Lishu or try to use her for their own ends as her father had. If I were to go with you to the western capital, Master Basin, I would only be a burden to you. Lady Lishu, no. Do your duty for Jai, I mean the Moon Prince, Master Basin. I'd only be baggage. I've come to have some idea of how people see me. The tears continued to gather in Lishu's eyes as she looked up at Basin, but they didn't fall. She blinked furiously, holding them back. What you said when you caught me gave me the strength to go on. To this day it holds me up. Jofu nuzzled Lishu's feet, worried about her. Lishu patted the duck on the head. She looked down, and when she looked up again there were no more tears in her eyes. I'm not just a tool. I want to learn to think for myself and choose my own path. Basin thought he caught a hint of a spark in Lishu's eyes. It was still weak and dim, but he saw her determination to make it burn brighter. I know there are many people who care for me. Kanan and my lady-in-waiting, His Majesty and Lady Ardu, the Moon Prince, and you, Master Basin, along with many others, but I've been so caught up in my own misfortune that I've never so much as thanked you. Lishu was as delicate and ephemeral as a flower. How could she be expected to worry about anyone but herself? You can't blame yourself for that. Anyone in your position would have done the same. Don't baby me, please. I've been doing a lot of thinking, such as I can, and this is my choice. If I told myself that I couldn't have done differently, that anyone would have done the same thing, wouldn't that be a slap in your face as well, Master Basin? Basin's breath caught in his throat. Guarding the imperial family meant putting his life on the line, not something he could readily do while also trying to keep Lishu safe. I can't go to the western capital, Lishu said, giving Jofu a pat on the head. But maybe once I've gained a little more confidence in myself here, she glanced away from him again. Maybe you could come back to Red Plum Village. Her face was red. She looked like there was more she wanted to say, but nothing came. Basin was blushing as hard as she was. His mouth hung open, but he couldn't seem to say anything either. As what Lishu was saying dawned on him, he felt the blood run hot with excitement. Absolutely, he said. Without quite meaning to, he pitched forward. Jofu squawked and scrambled out of the way. When I see you again, I promise I'll be a more worthy man. You said you would only be extra weight, but I can easily lift 100 or 200 kin. If you still worry that won't be enough, I'll keep working until I can lift 3 times that much. He would work so that Lishu need never fear that she was merely baggage, so that she would know he wouldn't stagger no matter how hard she leaned against him. The surface of the lake rippled softly, catching the light. Jofu pecked at the grass along the bank, where there were small buds amid the stalks. Spring would be here soon, but winter's chill had not yet departed. Lishu was in her own winter now. But though she be trampled, though she be picked, though she be pecked at, she was trying to put forth a beautiful blossom. It was not for Basin to interfere. He would simply wait, anticipating the spring day when that flower would bloom. He would do what he had to do until the day he could go to that flower. I'm going to the western capital, but I'll be back. I will protect the Moon Prince, help protect this nation, and I will protect you. I will grow into a man who can support anyone and anything who needs him. Lishu smiled. I know you will. I only pray for your success and safety. Was it just him, or was there an aroma of flowers in the air? It was strange. None of the buds among the grass seemed to be open yet. There was only Lishu with a smile on her face that looked like the first hint of spring. Chapter 6. The Farm Village. Part 1. Basin arrived in the western capital 3 days after Maomao and the others. She waited by the entrance to the annex, feeling it would be polite to at least say hello to him. When he appeared, however, she burst out, "What is that? So much for the friendly greeting. What? This is Jofu, Jofu, as in duck, I can see that. And it looks delicious." Basin was covered in sand and dust, and perched on his shoulder for reasons unknown was a duck. A perfectly ordinary domestic duck had white feathers and a yellow bill. The only distinctive thing about it was a single black spot on its beak. "Oh ho, a lovely gift you've brought me, I see. Sit back, dear younger brother-in-law, and let your sister handle dinner." Chu was ready to grab the bird right off his shoulder. "This duck isn't for food," Basin said, stopping her. "Oh yeah, they're in-laws, aren't they?" Maomao thought. She got the impression Chu teased Basin a lot. "If it's not food, then what is it? Your pet?" Chu asked. The duck did seem noticeably attached to Basin. It held onto his head with its wings and preened his hair. "I've been hatching ducks and distributing them to farming villages on the Moon Prince's orders. I was going to leave Jofu in one of the villages, but she's taken too much of a liking to me and won't leave." "Oh, I see," said Chu. Seeing as Basin had given the duck a name, he was evidently taken with her as well. The duck showed her natural intelligence as she hopped down from Basin's shoulder and pooped on the ground. "Smart," Basin said. "I have to go see the Moon Prince. Is there anyone who could take care of Jofu for me?" "Ooh, I will," Chu said, sticking her hand in the air. "Is there anyone else?" "Not sure, I'd be much better," Maomao said. She was already drooling. "I remember the duck Nen prepared back at Lahan's place. Boy, that was good." She didn't trust herself not to be bested by her own appetite. Maybe they could get the quack to take care of her. No, there was someone even more appropriate. "I know a farmer who would be perfect. I'll ask him," she said. "A farmer? Wait, you have acquaintances in the western capital?" "No, he was sent here from the central region." Basin remained puzzled, but there wasn't much more Maomao could say. It was the truth. In any case, they could entrust the duck to Lahan's brother. Basin had been in the western capital for 2 full days when Maomao finally got permission to tour a farming village. "You could take your time, young lady. We have plenty of medicine still. There is no need to go rushing off to the fringes of a place we hardly know yet," said the quack doctor. He took her excuse entirely at face value. There had to be some reason, after all, for a court lady serving as a medical assistant to leave her post and go on an inspection tour. "It is all right, sir. Who knows, I might even find some unknown drug." That much was true. I say province was home to different flora and fauna than Kaeru. There was no telling what plants or animals she might encounter, and what their potential medicinal properties might be. Maomao was actually a bit excited. She hoped she could find interesting medicines. She brought the absolute minimum of belongings, only what she could fit into a bag. She asked that some gold nuggets or silver chunks be prepared for her in case she needed cash on hand for anything. Unprocessed precious metals would be the most versatile and effective forms of payment in Isei province, which did so much trade with other nations. "Do they normally send court ladies on jobs like this?" Tianyu asked with a skeptical look. "I guess not. But I was hired more as an apothecary than a physician, so it was always possible they would send me on this kind of errand." He was trying to come up with a pesticide. An apothecary. Here I thought it was pure nepotism that got you where you are, Nying. Tianyu sure did know how to needle a person. "Oh, come now, don't be like that. You mustn't be so suspicious, my boy." "Oh, my poor quack, you're the one who needs to be more suspicious." Few people in the world were uninvolved enough that it wasn't worth asking questions about them. "If you say so, mister. Have a good time, Nying." That appeared to be all Tianyu meant to contribute to the conversation. He flopped over on one of the patient cots and waved over his shoulder. The quack gave Maomao a package of snacks and waved too. "See you soon, don't worry, I'll keep an eye on things while you're away," Lihaku said. Yes, with him there she wouldn't have to worry about the quack doctor. "Took you long enough. She's right on time." Basin and Chu were waiting for her at the entrance to the annex. Maomao had been told to wait until Basin arrived in the western capital so he could go with her as her bodyguard. Lihaku could stay here. Maomao looked around. Wasn't someone else supposed to be here? Is this it? "I thought we were supposed to be bringing seed potatoes. Along with Lahan's brother, for that matter, but she only saw a couple of horses. Where's the wagon with the potatoes?" Chu raised her hand. "I'll answer this one. The seed potatoes are going by wagon, but the wagon is much slower. We gave them a head start. It was the other guy's idea, the guy driving the wagon. I don't know how to describe him. He wasn't very memorable. And as for why I'm here, it's because you're such a dear friend, Miss Maomao. Miss Chu begged to come along with you. Otherwise, she would spend all her time worrying about how you were doing in lands unknown. What I'm hearing is it sounded like fun, so you decided to tag along. The unmemorable wagon driver had to be Lahan's brother. Maomao realized Chu hadn't officially met him yet. Rather than actually saying Maomao was right, Chu produced a string of small flags. "And what takes you on a tour of the farming villages, Master Basin?" Maomao asked, just to be polite. "The Moon Prince's orders. He told me to guard you with my life. He doesn't want Master Lacan going on a rampage in the western capital." There was nothing Maomao could say to that. She especially couldn't say that she thought Lihaku might have been a better choice for the job. It sounded like Basin had some idea of her connection to the old fart, but since he still treated her just the same way he always had, she decided to let it go. "Seems like practically everyone I meet these days knows." She was discovering that everyone around her seemed aware of something she herself would rather not admit. The freak strategist's behavior could not be swept under the rug here. "But what can I do? We're not related, so..." Maomao decided now was no time to rethink her attitude. "My father is here as the Moon Prince's guard. I'm sure it'll be fine," Basin said, although he sounded like he was mostly trying to convince himself. He might have been starting to wonder why Jinchi seemed to be keeping him at arm's length recently. "I hope he's not getting frustrated," Maomao thought. She'd been concerned about Basin's psychological state, but he appeared surprisingly stable. Slightly calmer and more mature than before, in fact. "Is it just me, little brother, or have you turned over a new leaf?" Chu said, nudging him. She seemed to share Maomao's intuition. What? Why would you ask that?" In any case, it was true that Gaoshan was here to serve as Jinchi's bodyguard. Jinchi might well have some enemies in the western capital, but they weren't actually likely to try to lay a hand on him. If someone important is assassinated in the middle of a long journey, it's the local ruler who has to face the music. Maomao didn't know much about Jiaoku-o, but she'd like to think that he wouldn't allow his most important visitor to find himself in danger. Chu grinned, then climbed onto her horse and put her feet in the stirrups. She was wearing not a skirt but a pair of trousers. "All right. The village is about 40 kilometers from here. We should reach it in 4 hours or so," Basin said. "Sounds like we'll still catch that wagon. How about we take a little detour?" Chu suggested. "Unfortunately, this isn't the capital and there aren't many tea houses around. You're welcome to share some grass with your horse if you want," Basin said, unruffled by Chu's tweak. "She is his older brother's wife as far as it goes." Basin seemed to be showing her a certain measure of respect, although Chu treated him the same way she seemed to treat everyone. "Which would you like to ride, Miss Maomao?" Chu asked. "I'm not sure I have a good answer to that." There were 2 horses and Maomao didn't know how to ride by herself, so she would have to ride with one of the others. It didn't really matter to her who. "Okay, you can be behind Miss Chu then. Mr. Basin's saddle is hard tough on the bum." Miss Chu's saddle is nicely tanned, highly shock absorbent, and easy to sit in for long hours on the trail. "Tell me, which would you like better?" Needless to say, Maomao pointed at Chu. "Just a second, where did you get such a nice saddle?" "I thought we were borrowing these horses." "Yes, but the Moon Prince is a very thoughtful man. He does good work every once in a while." "And just what do you mean by that?" Basin snapped, displeased by this backhanded compliment. At least in that way he was still Basin. "What do I mean? The moment the Moon Prince said he was assigning you to guard duty, I said there should be another woman to chaperone. He looked like he had seen the light." "Do not worry, Miss Maomao. The ever-thoughtful Miss Chu has your back. Your spirit may be stouter than a stern log, but your body is so delicate you would probably die if someone punched you." Miss Chu knew you could not be trusted to Basin by himself. "He does not know his own strength. You should be grateful to me. I probably would die if someone punched me." Maomao was not exactly the brawny type. She could endure poisons of all kinds, but physical assault would quickly prove her undoing. "You should be grateful too, little brother. You can call me Miss Chu or honored elder sister if you prefer. HNGH. Basin was never going to out-talk Chu. He could only hang his head. With the winner of the conversation decided, the 3 set off. There was nothing particularly remarkable about the journey. From the city they headed west across empty plains, sticking to a strip of bare earth that seemed to pass for a road. Once or twice they crossed paths with caravans coming the other way. Sometimes they saw tents belonging to nomads. The family's children tended the goats or sheep. Is that the horizon? Maomao wondered. Her old man Liumen had explained that there was a theory the world was a sphere. He said this was evidenced by the fact that on open land you could see a slight curvature along the horizon in the far distance. Maomao thought she did indeed see a bend. She didn't know for sure whether it was true the world was round, but if so, it would explain why the stars moved. So Liumen had said. Now she wished she had paid more attention, but unfortunately most of his explanation hadn't stuck with her. She realized with chagrin that it must have been one of the things he had learned while studying in a foreign land, and here she had ignored it. It was surprisingly cold on the plains, though it was spring. There was plenty of sunshine, but also a wind that sapped the body's heat. What was more, the air was so dry and a bit thin. They were high above sea level. "Here you go, Miss Maomao," Chu said, passing her a cloak. It was made of wool that blocked the wind and was worked with embroidery so fine that it would have looked distinguished even in the capital. Chu was wearing a cloak too. It looked equally warm, but was somewhat plainer than the one she had given Maomao. This was oddly subdued for Chu, who normally liked to be the center of attention. Basin's cloak was simple but practical. He also wore gloves to keep his hands warm on the reins. Maomao was able to stay warm, pressed up against Chu with the cloak on her back. However, the wind and the sun still got at every part of her that was exposed. She wished she had some of her sister's balms right now. She was concerned about tanning because of the strong sun and dry air. She had applied a sun-blocking ointment, but what about Chu? Her skin was darker than Maomao's, but it appeared perfectly healthy. "Miss Chu, I have something to prevent tanning. Do you want some? It will also keep your skin from drying out." It was worth asking, she figured. If she ran out, she could just make more with the components they had at the western capital. "Ooh, can I?" Chu said. Miss Chu has always been a little darker, so tans don't stand out so much, but she would be happy to try it. "Sure," Maomao replied. "I will give you some when we take a break." Basin had informed them that there was nowhere along the road for any pleasant diversions. They would have to rest the horses at some point, though. There was plenty of grass everywhere for the animals to eat. If they could stop somewhere with water, so much the better. And just at that moment a river came into sight. "We'll take a short break there," Basin called. "Yeppers," said Chu. "All right," said Maomao. When they reached the water, Maomao found it wasn't so much a river as a very large puddle. The water was shallow and there was no current. It had probably been formed by a rainstorm and would soon be dry again. There were trees growing nearby, shading large rocks with patterns carved into them. Signposts to here, there, and everywhere, Maomao surmised. She gazed at the trees growing around the watering hole. Are those pomegranate trees? The leaves looked like it somehow. A few of the branches bobbed gently. Maybe there were birds perching in them. She could see some at the water along with a group of wild horses getting a drink. There might be snakes around, Chu said. "Ooh, you think?" Maomao and Chu looked, but they didn't find any. There was a hole in the ground that looked like a den, but when they dug at it, a rat came out. They had brought provisions, so they let the rodent escape. Tall grass grew by the water's edge. Maomao knew from her research that beefwood and licorice were endemic to this area, but she didn't see any. She didn't expect to find significant quantities in one place. It was a lot to hope for, she guessed. She did find some grass with a unique scent. It was taller than average grass, but not as tall as a tree, and it looked like mugwort. If its medicinal properties were anything like mugwort's, it might be useful in exterminating insects. Maomao took a sample to find out, and she collected a few other intriguing plants as well. Chu clapped her hands and called Miss Maomao. "Lunch is ready." Maomao and her companions sat on a blanket, eating meat and pickled vegetables sandwiched between pieces of bread. Maomao found she had sweated profusely despite only riding along. Her body was ravenous for water and salt. The pickled vegetables tasted very good indeed. Basin started studying a map no sooner than he had finished eating. He took a floating compass out of his bag and floated it in the water. Maomao and Chu watched him. Maomao asked the obvious question. "What good is a map out on the open plains?" "It's better than nothing," Chu commented. "You're right that there aren't a lot of landmarks out here. Between the compass and the position of the sun, I think we should edge north a little bit. As long as nothing blocks the view, we should be able to see houses that will be our destination." She sounded flippant, but she was surprisingly capable. Evidently, she could even do land navigation. Basin looked away, seeming a little awkward. "May I ask something else?" said Maomao. "Anything you like, Miss Maomao. Why don't we have a local guide?" Frankly, she wished she had asked sooner. She had figured they were just going to a nearby village. They weren't leaving Li or anything, and that a guide wouldn't be necessary. But this was turning into a more elaborate trip than she had expected. A long journey was never precisely safe, even within national borders. It was best to have someone who knew the territory inside and out. "Funny you should ask that," Chu said, glancing around. Basin was looking too, his gaze hard. His hand was on the hilt of his sword, and he was obviously ready to leap into battle. "I don't like where this is going." Chu stood in front of Maomao. "Okay, just stay right there, Miss Maomao, don't move an inch." Maomao discovered that they were surrounded by strange men. She almost hadn't seen them emerge. They were scruffy-looking types who spoke Linese with a strong accent. As for what they said, it was your standard threats and demands for cash. And of course they wanted to be left with the women. These were bandits if Maomao had ever seen them. Wonder if I have any particular value as a woman. Neither Maomao nor Chu was especially attractive. She doubted they would fetch much of a price if the bandits tried to sell them.